What's up guys, my name's PT from Charlie Intel. So all over the internet, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, Twitter or the Charlie Intel website to name a few, I've seen a ton of comments from fans of the Call of Duty franchise calling out for Infinity Ward to be sacked, dropped or fired and never allowed to make a Call of Duty game ever again, and instead go and make Farming Simulator DLC or something similar and just never touch first person shooters full stop. So on top of that, people want to see Raven Software take the place of Infinity Ward instead, since they brought us the remastered version of Modern Warfare, and I think we can all agree it's pretty damn good. So given people clearly want to see another Call of Duty by Raven Software, I guess the big question is, will it actually happen, and will it be their own game or perhaps another remaster in the franchise? So before we get into how realistic or unrealistic this actually is, let's quickly go over what Raven Software have actually done within the Call of Duty franchise so far. So in case you didn't know, Raven Software are essentially a backup studio for Call of Duty. They started working on the franchise since 2010. Prior to that, they worked on their own projects, did their own games and all that kind of stuff. But since 2010 and Black Ops 1, they've started to be more involved in the Call of Duty franchise, working on things such as single player, multiplayer, and post-launch DLC. So essentially assisting with each developer such as Infinity Ward, Sledgehammer Games, and Treyarch with their games to make sure they're polished, ready for launch, and again also help with post-launch stuff such as DLC to give us more DLC content across the years. So they're quite involved, and they've been getting even more involved in recent years, as you can probably guess, with the remastered version of Modern Warfare, which in itself is a very risky project because if you do it wrong, you end up pissing off the entirety of the player base of that game, and you obviously destroy your reputation. So obviously the confidence in Raven Software is now quite high from Activision's point of view. So before we get into Raven Software and what they could do in the future, the first big question is, could Infinity Ward realistically get dropped or closed as a studio by Activision? So this one is actually pretty easy, and it's very unlikely to actually happen. So first off, Activision have actually put a ton of money into Infinity Ward as a studio, so it's very unlikely they'll just give up and just close the studio based on all the investment they've put in over the course of the last many years in the Call of Duty franchise history. Secondly, despite the fact that Infinity Ward might not be the same studio it was back in 2003 and during the Modern Warfare series, they still brought us Call of Duty in general. So they essentially started what is today the Call of Duty franchise back in 2003. So they developed the first game, they also gave us the Modern Warfare series, which kind of shaped the way Call of Duty actually exists to this day in 2016. So they did actually play quite a big hand in making Call of Duty so successful and making it such a popular franchise in the gaming world. So it's very unlikely they can simply drop Infinity Ward, despite the fact that in recent games they haven't had the best reception from the Call of Duty community. And thirdly, I think it's really down to managerial issues as to why the games have not been up to par from Infinity Ward since Call of Duty Ghosts and Infinite Warfare. I just think that you can't really blame the developers. The developers are very skilled and very passionate about their work, but it's really down to the managers and the people who put the ideas together that is to blame here if the games are not so good. So, you know, don't blame the guys who actually make the game, but more so the people who actually come up with the ideas and essentially kind of coordinate the entire process for the game up until its launch day or release day, as we had with Infinite Warfare on November 4th, 2016. So I think Infinity Ward is still a very competent studio, and I think they can still make great games. They just need more direction, and hopefully they'll have more of that over the course of the next few years as we go into 2019 with their next game, and 2022 or whatever for their next game after that as well. Now, one idea that many people have is to have Raven Software incorporated into a 4-year development cycle. So instead of releasing a game every 3 years from each developer, they then release a game every 4 years, giving them even more time to make Call of Duty games, and it ultimately gives Raven Software the opportunity to release their own game also. However, I honestly cannot see that happening. The amount of money it costs to keep 3 studios running to then release a game every 3 years is literally ridiculous. So to have a 4th studio into the mix whilst the franchise is currently on a downturn is probably not a very good return on investment for Activision, so I honestly cannot see it happening. It would be great, but it does mean we'd have to wait 4 years for Treyarch, or 4 years for Sledgehammer Games, and 4 years for Raven Software. And again, that is a long time to spend on a first-person shooter such as Call of Duty, and if they were to do that, I'd like to see evidence of 4 years of work, such as some very drastic changes and some massive games releasing every single year. But honestly, I just don't see that happening anytime soon. But if they were to do something like that, I imagine it will happen way further into the future, assuming the Call of Duty franchise is back to its peak days again, where it's breaking records every single year. But until then, I think we're going to be stuck with 3 studios, which is Infinity Ward, Treyarch, and Sledgehammer Games, and Raven Software will retain their position as being a backup studio. So with all this considered, the only scenario in which I can see Raven Software releasing their own game from scratch anytime soon, perhaps in the next like 3 or 6 years, is if they were to swap with a studio such as Infinity Ward for one cycle. So Infinity Ward come out of the cycle for 3 years and focus on doing the kind of work Raven Software does, like helping other studios with their single player, multiplayer or DLC needs, or perhaps even developing a remaster of Modern Warfare 2, which, come to think of it, would actually be pretty cool since they're developing or remastering their own game that they actually worked on 7 or so years ago. So that would actually be pretty interesting to see. And I think they do quite a good job of it, given it's their own game, so I'm not quite sure where they could go wrong, but who knows. So ultimately, I don't think Raven Software will likely be doing anything other than backup or kind of helping hand work for the next few years, unless, of course, like I said, they swap out of a studio for a 3-year cycle. Otherwise, I think they'll be just continuing to work on just helping with games such as with single-player, multiplayer, and DLC needs, and perhaps even doing more remasters over the course of the next 2 or 3 years to release alongside another big game in the franchise. So perhaps they'll do Modern Warfare 2 in 2019, for example, to release alongside Infinity Ward's next game. So let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below, and as always, leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe for further Charlie Intel content every 1 to 2 days. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next video. Goodbye.